Aloha and welcome to another episode of Truth in Movies. Tonight, we're breaking down a highly requested movie. This movie's been requested a million times, and we almost did this movie last week, but I went with Quantumania. But this time, I'm so glad that I listened to your advice. I haven't seen this movie in a long time, and man, what a good breakdown. This is called Jupiter Ascending with Mila Kunis and the dude from Magic Mike, whatever his name is. All right, cool. So let's jump right into things. I'm glad there's so many people already in the chat. Good to see all of you find live people, and to everybody in the future too. Enjoy the show. All right, let's jump right into this movie. Amazing flick. It's so esoteric and deep. We're going to cover a lot of different topics today. Now, we start off. We hear the woman's name is Jupiter, and she says, technically speaking, I'm an alien. I feel just like that every day, every time I wake up. Technically speaking, I'm an alien. I don't really feel like I'm a normal part of the modern society that we live in today. So I feel like a lot of us are going to relate to this particular character. We're going to learn a lot more about Jupiter, what her name means and where Jupiter comes from and stuff too. And then towards the end, we might, actually get into the planet or whatnot, but we're going to get deeper than just the planet. Now, her dad's name, she starts talking about her family and her upbringing. Now, this movie will follow the family lineage and the storyline of various gods and goddesses all throughout time, from Roman mythology to Greek mythology to ancient Egyptian and so on and so forth. We'll even get into the Anunnaki and some other topics here as well. But she's going to start things off with the lineage as well. It should be. This is how the ancient myths and legends always begin, is they start with the oldest gods, and they tell you who gave birth to who. So she says that her father's name was Maximilian Jones. Interesting name. Let's check it out real quick. We'll check it out in a second, apparently. So she says her dad says she is our Jupiter. And we're going to learn about these names right now. So Jupiter, if you didn't know, is basically the exact same god. I mean, there's no doubt about this, even in modern academics when they talk about Jupiter. Same as Zeus, the exact same being. Many of those gods, whenever you cross-reference Roman mythology with Greek mythology, they're the exact same storylines. They just have different names put onto them. Sometimes the stories are slightly changed. It's an excellent example of what I call cartoonification, right? It's the caricatures that have been drawn over the actual stories and the truths over time and passed along to us in the modern world. So Zeus/Jupiter. Some characteristics of Jupiter/Zeus are the Lord of the Sky. So some people might think that this is a cosmic, like, space deity or a space god like Kronos is, but it's actually a bit different. Okay, we're going to talk about who Jupiter actually represents. The Lord of the Sky, the cloud gatherer. Interesting. So remember in the Bible how the Hebrews, whenever they went into the wilderness, they followed a pillar of light by nighttime, and by day it was a pillar of cloud. It was a cloud. It was a vaporous cloud all around. Also, the supreme ruler of Mount Olympus, just as Yahweh is the supreme ruler of Mount Sinai, and many other different deities have their own sacred religious mountains associated with them. Also, they are the leaders of the gathering place of these mountains where the gods gather together. The spiritual leader of both gods and men, the upholder of the law, justice, morals, and civilized conduct. So when you see this god appear or reappear, that's usually when morality is restored to our world. Some of you already know where we're going with this. Some attributes of Zeus/Jupiter are the thunderbolt, the eagle, the aegis, which will make an appearance here in the movie later on, and the oak tree, exactly like Odin being hung upon this sacred tree, just like Jesus being hung upon this tree or /cross with the cross beam, or a stauros or a crucifix or a cruciform, etc. Right? So Jupiter, right? Now Jupiter also comes from Yah, which is spelled different ways. Sometimes it's Y-A or Y-A-H or E-A, which is the first part of the god Yahweh, etc. There's a direct correlation and relationship with Enki, or the Lord of the Earth, etc. And it's Yu or Yah Pater. Pater is the name Peter, which also means a father type of a figure, right? So it's interesting that even though this is a woman or a female figure, it's being applied to and superimposed on top of a male god, because we're not talking about physical sex when it comes to these ancient deities. They change their sexes all the time. The stories changed over time, whether they were seen as a male or a female. It all was dependent upon the perception of those the perception filters of those who were witnessing these celestial events and terrestrial events that were happening, that only happened once every eon, once every age, every 1,000 years or so. All right, so that's Jupiter. Now, I want to also just point this out too. Oftentimes when you see a picture like this, when you see the picture of like these ancient gods, look and see what they have along with them. It's almost never just, some guy or some girl without any, they're always holding on to something, right? So you can see who this god represents by what they hold on to, because it's really the artifacts that represent the god, not the personification, not the humanoid body of the god. So for example, Zeus or Jupiter holds on to a staff, a beam. It represents a ray of light. And that's exactly what Jupiter is going to represent all throughout this, is that cosmic beam that we've talked about time and time again here on my channel when we go over the plasma apocalypse, that terrestrial, good, positive earth energy, typically blue, that shoots up from within the world and touches the sky. So that's why he's holding on to that staff, that rod, and that's why so many other God-type figures and savior-type figures also carry these as well. And then on the other hand is, I believe, a tiny little statue of Nike. It's kind of hard to see right there, but I'll zoom into it. So this is Nike or Nike, which means victory, right? This god represents victory or being victorious or surviving, etc. All right, so we move on to, we're going to witness Jupiter's birth. This is the middle of the ocean, directly under the moon. You see how they put that boat? Jupiter, little baby Jupiter is about to be born directly under the full moon, which is exactly where this god is said to have been born. And that's why sometimes this god / goddess is correlated with the moon itself, right? The goddess of wisdom oftentimes is also the goddess of the moon, or sometimes the god of the moon as well too. All right, so they're in the middle of the ocean and Jupiter is narrating and she says, somewhere in the middle of the Atlantic, which is interesting. Now we have a correlation to Atlas, which is where the word Atlantic comes from. It's Atul Oz, or strong serpent. And by extension, it's strong plasma, strong energy, which is really what it was. When the people saw this type of energy, they described it in ways that they were familiar with, like serpentine or snake-like in form. So somewhere in the middle of the ocean is where this god was born. This god is born up out of the waters, out of the earthly waters, out of the earth itself. And we'll learn a bit more too, but it says, in the middle of the Atlantic, she pushed me out too. So that's exactly where this god / goddess was born, is in the waters. It comes up out of the waters, which is a direct correlation to Mount Meru. Meru literally means of the waters, or Meru, which means of the ocean or of the seas, etc. Right? So this god is born up out of the ocean, born out of the water, which is appropriate because we're all born out of water. Without a father as well. Now in the movie, her father was murdered before she was born, but this harkens back to the concept of these savior figures and these gods and goddesses that are born, they're like only begotten or whatnot, where they're born of a virgin, basically. They have no father figure, and that's because they're born out of the earth, and the earth is the mother earth. It needs no cosmic union, and you'll see that in this movie. We're going to go over the cosmic union too, but it does not actually need to meet with the sky because it is born up out of the earth, and the earth is seen as a virgin. So she says, I was born in the house of Leo. So also we get a little more context as to who Jupiter represents, being from the house of Leo. And if you look up the etymology of Leo, we've done this a couple of times, specifically for Back to the Future breakdown. There were some lions and stuff in there too. If you look up the word lion, which is where Leo, lion comes from, the word Leo, and you go all the way down, it talks about it means lion, etc. But if you go all the way down to the word lion in Slavic or Slavonic, it is livu or livu. Now remember, in our last Truth in Movies, we learned that the V wasn't always a V. It used to be the letter U, and the U and the V were interchangeable, and basically the exact same letter. So it is lewu, lewu, or in Polish, lu, loo, or this is where we get the word Louis, and going to the loo, or the bathroom, right? In Czech, it's lev. This is the house of Levi, the house of the priests. This is where we get our word love, and many other words that are related to that, because the original meaning of liu was to flow. It's a place where there is a flow, just like how water flows, just how, and basically it was an energetic flow. So it was a vibration when you go with the flow, when you go with the vibe, right? And that's why we get words like love and stuff like that too, because it's a frequency. And that's what it's related to. Also related to the god Enki, as we talked about before, right? Enki's sacred number, he was one of the Anunnaki god beings or whatnot, is 40. Interesting. That's also the sacred number for Yahweh that represents Yahweh in the Bible is 40 days and 40 nights, etc. It says he is the god of fresh waters called Apsu. The fresh waters were called Apsu. He is a god of wisdom, agriculture, etc. And you can see he's surrounded by what they believe was flowing water. I don't believe that was flowing water. I believe this is an electrical current, which is an electrical arc on both sides, and that God being in the middle had two witnesses on either side, which were male and female, anode and cathode, and they created an electrical arc in the middle, and that beam that comes up out of Mount Meru that is born out of the ocean split that electrical arc, dividing it into two separate energies, the positive and the negative. And so you see that there's this current, there's this flow, there's this lu, there's this lev, there's this love, etc., right, that comes up out of this god. And this particular god sometimes is seen as a male god, sometimes it's a female god. And check out the little picture down there at the bottom too. They're showing you some of these ancient drawings and stuff. It's hard to zoom in all the way to it, but here's Enki right there in the middle, surrounded by these four pillars. And in between these four pillars, you can see that there's a current that flows up into the sky. These are the beams that shoot up into the sky. So we meet Jupiter. Jupiter is also her name is Jones. Her last name is Jones, which is really Janus or Janus or Jonas or John or Johann. It's so many different derivatives and ways to say that, right? But Janus is the god of closets, and it's where we get janitor from, which is why you see God represented as a janitor so oftentimes, because this entity, okay, is what is responsible for cleaning up the world when it gets its dirtiest, which is where we are right now. So that's how you know that the apocalypse is near, and Mother Earth is going to do her job to shake off the disease that has started to spread so much in the form of degradation of society and degradation of morals and just everything falling and being in a fallen state because of increased entropy over time, right? So this blue goddess, which is, you're going to see she's wearing blue almost all the way throughout this movie, and typically the characters that represent that beam that comes up out of Mount Meru will be wearing blue or white. All right, so this is the janitor god or goddess, which is what she's doing right now. She's cleaning up, and she's seen as a janitor. Janus was a Roman god of hallways, doorways, bridges, gates, the ruler of Latium, and was responsible for the Golden Age and brought money and agriculture to the area. It's also the god that was worshipped by many of the Phoenicians, maybe under a different name, and is associated with trade, like Mercury, streams and springs, and could have been an early sky god. I will say was an early sky god, and I will go further than that and say is an early sky god. That brings us to the title, Jupiter Ascending. We're going to come back to the planet Jupiter a little towards the end, but right now we're going to focus on the ancient depictions of these gods and goddesses. Now they take us to a different world, allegedly a different world. There are many different Earths out there. There's alternate Earths all over the place. We imagine that they're totally different, like every single world is totally different. I imagine that every single world is very much the same because they all share repetitious energy patterns, repetitious energy signatures, which means that they tend to produce the same beings, the same lost planets or realms, or however you'd like to see it, over and over and over again, right? So to save on memory and stuff. So you see this world right here has had its own little apocalypse, and it's all deserted. It's desolate. There's nobody there. It's just a bunch of broken buildings and trash laying around and stuff. Now we meet one of our first godlike characters, and he says, have you ever seen a harvest? He's walking around with another goddess, and they're talking about this harvest that happens to these worlds. She says, no, but I've heard that they feel no pain. When they mention this harvest, they're mentioning the apocalypse that we go through, where it is seen as the human beings being harvested and almost being offered to this sky god or sky goddess. Usually it's a sky god, and the terrestrial gods are usually more feminine in nature, and the sky gods are more masculine in nature. So they're talking about the apocalypse. Have you ever heard of a harvest? Have you ever seen the harvest? She says, no, but I hear that they feel no pain. Excuse me. The reason that people would feel no pain during the apocalypse, there's many different reasons. One of those is because so many people pass out. When we're talking about the sky or the atmosphere depressurizing in our world, all the air gets sucked up, or not all of it, but much of the air gets sucked up, and the winds pick up so much, it becomes very difficult for people to breathe. So oftentimes you'll also see these breadcrumbs in the movies where they're telling you, or they're telling other characters, to breathe and to remember to breathe, and that breathing is very important. So they'll mention that time and time again, which they do in this movie too. And another reason for that is that new chemicals are created, and some of those chemicals actually help to numb the body. For example, nitrous oxide. There's clouds of these chemicals that will float around, and when people breathe them in, they will suffer the effects, right? Sometimes they're positive effects. Sometimes they'll make them laugh. You know, at the end of the world, everyone's going through this laughing plague or whatever. Now a third god-like entity shows up. These are all brothers and sisters, and this is how the best of the ancient myths and legends and histories across time, the legendary ones, this is how they start off their stories. They give you their genealogy. They show you who came first and second and third, and what relationship they had with one another. Usually it's a very crazy type of a family, and that's how we're going to start this movie off, and that's how we'll end it too. It says most of them, this guy comes in, he says most of them, this guy, you can barely hear him, he goes, most of them were miserable in their lives. So most people, when the apocalypse happens, are miserable. Why? Because the energy is ramping up and you are at an all-time low. The energy in the world is being sucked down into the bowels of the earth. So there's hardly any energy in the world, which leads to depression and anxiety and sicknesses and famines and all kinds of bad things. So this guy comes in and he tells the truth. He's like, hey, you know, they're trying to see this as a good thing, and they represent these gods or entities that are present during these times. They also represent, there's different levels of symbolism here. They also represent like actual humanoid beings from other worlds that have figured out how to travel between worlds, between apocalypses. When the doors open, they get to travel between worlds. He says, most of them were miserable in their lives, and what we do for them is a mercy. So they see it as being merciful, right? Which is understandable when the world has gone to crap and everything's really terrible and bad. Many of the people, many of the residents of these worlds call out to whatever gods they worship, whatever names that they use for these entities and energies. They call out to them and say, please come soon, come change this, right? So this is what they're doing. And oftentimes, because they come and change things, which involves destroying evil, right? All of the evil people and their offspring see them as completely bad. And you know what I mean? But it all depends on your perspective. Then he says, the house of Abrasax continues to thrive. This was really interesting for me to read. I was like, that sounds familiar. The house of Abrasax. Abrasax. I'm like, that sounds a lot like Abraxas. Abraxas is typically misunderstood, I would say. Okay, most people, when they hear the word Abraxas, they think of like just the name of a demon or some evil energy or something. But you'll see it's actually one and the same as Jupiter. It's one and the same as Zeus. It's one and the same as Mercury and so many of these other gods and goddesses, Sophia and whatnot, right? So let's check out Abraxas. Let's check out what Abraxas is, because their house is Abraxas. It's the house of Abraxas. Nagagato! What's up, Nagagato? All right, so let's check out Abraxas. Now, Abrasax is just an alternate spelling. You see it right there? Abrasax is an alternate spelling of Abraxas. So it is one and the same entity. So let's figure out who it is. It says here, Abraxas. Let's see. A variant of Abrasax is a word of mystic meaning in the system of the Gnostic Basilides, being there applied to the great archon. Now, anytime you hear the word archon, the on is a suffix. The on means of the. That's all it means. So, of the arch. That's what the archon are. They are those beings that reached up and could touch the arch, or those beings or entities that came from the arch, that came down from the arch, which is the arch of the world, the ceiling of our terrestrial world that we live on here. Affectionately, I call the dome. And for good reason. All right, so let's see. But it says the Archon. And let's take a look at Abraxas, how Abraxas is cartoonified. Okay, this is not, there's probably not, there may be, okay, but there's probably not some creature that walks around human with a chicken head and two snakes as legs and all that kind of stuff. Okay, this is a cartoonified caricature that represents aspects of a reality, an ancient, forgotten truth. Okay, so you'll notice that we've talked about many of these aspects many different times. So let's start at the top. You can see that there is a circle above Abraxas's head. Most people would call this the halo. The halo represents the hole in the sky, sometimes the inverted mini dome, which we'll talk about later, that is up at the top at the roof of our world. So whenever the light conditions change in our world, or the energetic conditions change in our world, people will see that this beam of light shoots up, branches out, seems to sprout hands that reach up towards the sky, just like Atlas, right? And then right above its head, or sometimes this is seen as its head at the same time, is this circle. Right? Some people interpret that as being a sphere or a ball in the sky. Others see it just as a circle or a halo or a black hole sun, which is what this is. The chicken head. Now, these gods have different bird heads quite often because whenever our world depressurizes, there's a hole that is left open at the very top of the world, creating like a window to our world, a passageway, a portal, a stargate. So many different ways you could look at it, right? But there's still a remnant of plasma, red plasma, whenever our world stops depressurizing and the electromagnetic barrier goes back up, there's still a bunch of red plasma up there. And it seeps out because there's winds and stuff that are created up there. And some of that plasma spills out. And some people interpret that plasma spilling out of that hole as a bird's beak that comes out, or a tongue of a goddess or a god or whatnot. I mean, there's sometimes it's seen as a beard, and it just depends on the perspective of the people who are looking at it, right? Then you have this whip, which is basically representative of plasma that comes out, down, and disciplines the world or whatnot. And then these legs, these snake legs. I've seen these many different times before, and you will too. Let's check out some other variations of this. So here's Abraxas again, also holding on to that Aegis. That shield right there is known as the Aegis, but we'll come to the Aegis a little later on in the movie. All right, so you see these two snake legs, right? Like, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. People would just chalk it up to like, oh, it's just some weird, imagination. Like, it's just made up. It has no root in reality whatsoever. It does have a root in reality because these two snake legs represent plasma and an electrical arc at the base of this beam of light that shoots up into the sky, which is the legs of Abraxas. Oftentimes, it's affectionately seen as a female with two snake legs, and it's called the snake-legged goddess. Or the word for a goddess or a god that has snake legs, or anything that has snake legs, is an anguiped. Anguiped. An anguiped is something that has snake legs. It says the snake-legged goddess or anguiped goddess, and in this one, it's female, right? Is the modern day name of this goddess, who is so called because several representations of her are depicted as a goddess with snakes as tendrils or legs, which represents the plasma at the base of Mount Meru, or the electrical arc on either side of it, right? Giving us the legs of the glyph of the squatter man. Here's another representation. This one's really interesting. Let's check it out. So this one also has the two snake legs that come out from either side of it, right? But let me zoom out a bit. It has a wolf's head That's also really interesting because you're going to see there's a character in this movie that's a lichen or has lycanthropy and is basically a werewolf or a type of werewolf, which we'll talk about too. But look what's in the hand right there. You see that? The caduceus. The caduceus is a small little symbol for that beam of light that shoots up into the sky with the other rays that are twisting around it, going all the way up, and it brings healing to the nations. It heals the world, basically, of various diseases. It adds to our lifespans and stuff, which we'll also talk about in this movie as well, because this movie highly references the concept of eternal life and immortality. Here's another one. This time they have it more of like a Pan head, the god Pan or whatnot, with the 2 snake legs, etc. Here's the female version with the legs that spread out. This one doesn't look like they're snakes or anything, but you can tell it's the exact same concept, the fertility goddess, which is what Starbucks is. And this is where their logo comes from too. This is not a mermaid. This is not a siren in the typical sense. Okay. However, it does sing. Okay. Because energy, especially the louder and the stronger it is, you can hear energy, you can hear electricity, and it's the singing sword that comes out of Mount Meru, and the electrical arc and stuff buzzes and it makes sounds and stuff like that. That's why they're called sirens. Here's another version of Abraxas, just so you can just get another feel for it. And that's also another reason why the bird head is always turned to the side. Okay. It's almost never just like straight on. It's always off to the side, one side or another side. It all depends on where you are or where an individual is in the world when this is all happening physically. They look to the north, they see that beam of light reaching up and touching the hole or the depressurization point in the sky, and some of that plasma seeping out, and it depends on their location in the world, if it's facing left or if it's facing right or whatever, right? All right, so let's go back to Abraxas. Abraxas. This is really interesting. So we have Abraxas here, and it says that the word Abraxas may be related to abracadabra or abracadabra, right? Abracadabra. I want to reach out and grab you. Anyways, so abracadabra. Let's get serious about that word for just a moment. I have studied the word abracadabra. I've studied many different magical words and incantations. I believe they're really interesting, especially those that have just lost their meaning, and people just say them and they have no idea what they mean. They just know it has some association with transubstantiation or magic or whatever, right? So abra. Without getting too detailed, the letter A was a glyph that meant behold, okay, or look, or check this out, basically. And then bara, or B-R-A, sometimes it's B-A-R-A, abara, bara meant to create, right, to let something become. So it says behold, let it become, and then dabara. Dabara means to speak or words. So it literally means I'm saying magic words. I'm saying words that are of power. Behold my powerful words. That's really what abara kadabara means. Abara, ka. I forgot the ka. The ka just means like. Okay, so behold creation like or according to my words, dabara or davarim, and depends on, how you would like to say it. But abracadabra means let it be according to my words, basically, or let it be like my words, or like my command, you could say. So Abraxas, they speculate, is related to that too, which is really interesting because if it is the blue beam that shoots up out of Mount Meru, that's the place of the zephyr. That's the place of the voice of God, the breath of God that comes out, the windy cave, the cave of whistling, etc. I mean, there's different names and descriptions for it. This says Abraxas or Abra Sax. Abra means to, let it be according to my word, or behold, create. And then Sax. Sax is interesting. It's the root of Saxon. So those of the Sax or Sax or sex, you could say too, right? Sex, Sax, Saxon, all those words, the root of them means to cut or essentially to divide. Exactly how that blue beam from Mount Meru shoots up and divides that electrical arc of the positive and the negative, the anode and the cathode, Adam and Eve, etc., and so on and so forth. Abrasax was, this is interesting too. Check this out. It says Abrasax was a form of the Adam Kadmon of the Kabbalistic belief system. Adam Kadmon. is, according to the Kabbalah, the energetic form of the first man who was created in the image of God. So let's read a little bit about that. It says, then a ray of divine light penetrated the vacuum. This is like the Kabbalistic creation story. Then a beam of divine light penetrated the vacuum or space above, and the persona of Adam Kadmon was projected into the vacuum. The first stage of Adam Kadmon was the form of 10 concentric circles, which emanated from the ray. Now, if you study plasma physics, you know exactly what this is describing, right? This is describing toroidal fields, which emanate, from a beam of light or from a beam of energy that shoots up and creates these toroidal fields and these little eddies and stuff that branch off from it. Let me go ahead and zoom in so you can see this a bit better here. But these are images from actual experimentation. On the right there, you can see the actual experiments where they shot these beams of light, and they saw that it creates these little rings or steps. And if you're looking at it in the sky and it's the macrocosmic version of something that's done in a lab, it's going to look like a ladder in the sky that you could climb up to the sky, or a beanstalk, or a caterpillar, or all these different figures. It all depends on your perspective, right? Or a stack of holy donuts. I don't know, right? Here's another one. Here's some other stuff. This is all done in the lab up here. And then down here is what they guessed it would look like before they did their experiments. And as you can see, it creates the squatter man figure, right? With the beam of light shooting up, you have this at the bottom would wrap around. That can also be created by an electrical arc. Then you have that first toroidal field, or that little donut shape in the middle. And if it's longer, you would have more of them, just like you see up here, right? Hold on, let me show you. So at the top up here, dang, you can't really see that. At the top, you can see that there's 3. It can create a whole bunch of them, right? But anyways, it branches out towards the top too. This gives you the Atlas figure, and so many other gods that hold their hands up into the sky, which means and implies peace, or a time of peace. This also is depicted as the phoenix as well. You can see that Abraxas has a bird form right here with a snake at the bottom or at its feet, right? On these other pictures, it shows you little snake legs, right? This one says Yahweh. That is a direct correlation to Yahweh, or the Tetragrammaton, or the Yod-He, Vav-He, the 4-letter God in the Bible, etc., which I have a really good video that breaks down the biblical name of God and why it's called Yahweh, or the Tetragrammaton, as opposed to something else. So check that out in my playlist. That's in my Ancient Oblivion playlist. One of the first videos. It's got a picture of an eyeball and it says Enki on it. It's a really interesting video. But right down here, you can see it's also the phoenix, okay? So sometimes it's not personified as a human being that is standing up, but as a bird that has its wings spread off to the side with its head cocked off to the side as well, because this is what the plasma does. You can see this when you watch the aurora borealis, that it can snake about, and then in just an instant, that snake figure can grow feathers and become very feathery and fluttery up there in the sky. And this is the phoenix that is born out of the fire and out of the ashes and reborn over and over again, because it's a cyclical thing that happens in our world. Now we get back to this trio of gods and goddesses, brothers and sisters, who are all related to each other. The first one, his name is Titus. Okay, now his name harkens to the tet. Okay, the vowel in the middle matters not. All right, it's the tet. It's thoth. It's the tet. It represents a circle with an X in the middle, which is the ancient glyph called the tet, and that's a byproduct of electrical discharge. That's one of the shapes that terrestrial forms that happens whenever you have terrestrial discharge or electromagnetic terrestrial discharge. And his name is Tait or Tet. Os. When you see the US, it means strength in the old languages, or strong with. Okay, so just like the United States, that was purposefully chosen so that the short form would be strength or a strong nation, etc. Right? So the us at the end means strong. It doesn't have to be us; it could be Oz as well. It could be different variants of this. So it's the guy who he represents a Titan type figure who comes from the Tet, the place of the Tet, where the gods come from, where the Titans live, etc. And then Kalik, which is not this guy, but his sister, Kalik is directly related to Calico, to Kali, the goddess Kali, and then Balaam. Balaam is the last one. He's related to Baal or Baal, which means Lord. But let's take a look at Kali. Kali, like Kali fornication. The Red Hot Chili Peppers talk about this particular goddess, etc., right? It says here it's a Hindu goddess, if you go with Hinduism. Hindu goddess who is considered to be the goddess of ultimate power, time, destruction, and change in Shaktiism. Down here it says she's regarded as the ultimate manifestation of Shakti, which sounds like the word shock electrically, right? The primordial cosmic energy, because it is an electromagnetic phenomenon that is personified as a male or female god or goddess. And then Balaam comes from Baal or Bel or different variants of that as well. And if we read about it, it says that Baal or Baal was particularly associated with the storm and fertility god Hadad and his local manifestations. So Bel, which means Lord essentially or affectionately, or it also means like from the Lord, etc., from God, etc., from the mighty one. It says it was a storm god, just like Thor and so many other gods of storms and electricity, because they're electrical in nature. Now we get back to the movie. Jupiter is in bed. She's just a regular girl, or appears to be a regular girl, who is a janitor. She wakes up super early to go to work and clean toilets and stuff, and she's under these blankets. Look at the symbols on the blankets, right? Doesn't that look exactly like the legs of Abraxas, how we just went over, right? Or these gods and goddesses who have snake legs? They put that purposefully on her blankets because everything you see in this bedroom is a prop. It was propped there. It was put up there. It was put there purposefully, which means every single thing that you're looking at, like from this little alien creature picture right there, you see that little alien head, to the picture or the planet Jupiter right there, to the number 4, which is not really, but it's a symbol for Jupiter, etc. All of these things were put here purposefully, and the butterflies, which represent change or transformation from one thing to another thing, right? And then she wakes up and she says, I hate my life, right? This is us. This is us who have this energy signature in the modern world right now. We don't feel at home. We feel alien. We feel strange. We go on in the movie and she's in somebody's house cleaning it up, and there's the spiral staircase. And she's in it, which is appropriate because that represents that plasma energy that shoots up and spirals up into the sky, just like we were talking about. It represents transformation. It represents transitioning from one realm to another realm, because that's where you go to escape the world, or to go up or down, right, into other places. Now, there's these bad guys, and they're tracking this hunter character who we'll meet here in just a minute, and they call him a lycantent, which the root of that is lichen. A lichen is basically a werewolf, okay? In modern pop culture, a lichen is like a werewolf. So somebody who is human or humanoid, but they have like characteristics of dogs, or at least to us, they appear through our perception filters to have characteristics or share characteristics with dog type creatures, or bears sometimes, or wolves and stuff like that, right? So they're called lichen, and it comes from the word light. It comes from Luke, actually, or loop. Sometimes it's with a P in the ancient languages. So lupus, Lucas, all of these words means light. They are beings of light and beings from the light. And it's really interesting to learn more about them. We'll check in with the lichen in just a bit here. So these are the hunters. Here's some one-eye symbolism, and says that this guy's after our bounty. So they're all looking for Jupiter. They're all looking for Zeus. They're all looking for the fountain of youth. They're all looking for this blue beam of goodness and energetic change that brings power to those who find it, right? The bad guys are looking for it because they don't want to die. They want to stay in power forever. They have selfish motives. The good people are looking for it because they want to go home. They want to be surrounded by good vibes and good vibrations and positive frequencies and stuff, right? So there's a bounty out. The bounty hunters are looking for Jupiter. Here's the lichen dude. He's got these special boots that can enable him to fly, which is pretty cool. I just thought this was a sweet picture. That's why I took a picture of it. Then we have these reptilian creatures who work for the bad guys. They kind of remind me of like the little reptilian creatures in like the original Super Mario Brothers movie or whatever. But what they represent are the Saurian race, or the reptilian race, you could say, who are more scaly in nature, and they tend to have like a lot more bones that protrude out of their skeletal structure. And oftentimes I've found this may be because they live for so very long. Humans also can develop like little like spikes and stuff on our skulls, just like you see like in Star Wars, how some of the Sith and stuff, like they'll actually have like bony cheeks that stick out, or horns and stuff like that. I've shared many pictures of people, humans, that grow horns and tails and all kinds of interesting things. It's amazing how quickly our DNA and our genetics can change with just a quick change in our environment. Keep that in mind. Now, they say that they found Jupiter, but she's going under a pseudonym, which means a false name, a pseudonym. Catherine Dunleavy. So let's check out what that means. That's a pseudonym. That's another name for this blue beam, right? Catherine. If you look up Catherine, it means pure. It comes from Kataros. Welcome, Brenda. So Catherine means pure. Dunleavy comes from Don, which means brown, and Slevi, which means mountain. So pure brown mountain. Now we're going to get even deeper, because the word brown, or the color brown as we are used to it today, did not used to mean like, you know, brown like the color that we're used to. Okay, what it meant, if you look it up, it actually was called brun, which means it's from Old Frisian and Old High German, brun, bruin, brown, braun, and it's from the Proto-Indo-European root word ber, which means bright, or the color brown, right? Which, like the color brown would have looked a lot different under a different color spectrum as you go further back in time, when the color spectrum was less white from, you know, the skylight, and more red a long time ago. So it would have been a brightness or a shiningness. The Old English word also had a sense of brightness and shining. So like Doc Brown in Back to the Future, remember we went over that? His name means brightness from the hollows of the earth, basically, or light that comes up out of the earth, or the lower parts of the earth, you could say. So it's really interesting that her pseudonym is pure. Let's say it all together. Pure bright mountain, or pure light that comes out of the mountain. Basically, it's Mount Meru, okay? That was a long way to say that, but basically it's Mount Meru. Hey, thanks for all the support, everybody. I super appreciate all of you. Jasper, welcome. All right, so Mila Kunis, aka Jupiter, is hiding in the closet, which is where she should be. Okay, so they put her in her rightful place, which is in the closet, because she is the goddess or the god of janitors, right? Or closets, or doorways, or transitional places, liminal spaces, etc. Right? So she's in that closet, and she sees her best friend being taken advantage of by these little gray alien types, these little demonic, weird looking alien types. And they go in there and they put these things on her that just freeze her up. Okay. So oftentimes people report these alien grays, they call them, when they see them, that they just freeze. And it's not because they're just so terrified that they can't move. That might be the case sometimes, but it's also because they are said to be telepathic in nature, and they can just think a person to freeze or to stop. And because we have not learned how to master our own minds, that opens up others to master our minds for us and control us, basically. So that's what these little creatures were bred to do. And here's another glimpse of these little creatures. Basically, they're supposed to be like little alien greys or whatever. And they go in and they abduct her and her friend, and then they see her. So they actually use like the flashy thing from Men in Black, and they cause them to forget their memories, which is also something you can do if you're telepathic and, you know, others cannot control their minds. They don't know how to put up barriers and defenses of their own minds. You can actually make people forget things, which is very easy to do, which the movie will also talk about later. Now, Jupiter needs some money, okay? As do we all. So she goes to this clinic where she's going to sell her eggs or whatnot and get thousands of dollars, but she's nervous. She's having second thoughts. She's in there with all of these doctors and professionals, and she's like, I don't know about this. Like, this doesn't feel right. She's in this cold room, not comfortable. Like, look at it. That's like a typical hospital, right? It doesn't feel welcoming. It doesn't feel like home. It's not designed to put us at ease. It's designed it's like a fast food restaurant, right? All they care about is getting money, about getting people in and out as quickly as possible, etc. It's very cold and stuff. So she's in there. She's like, I think something's wrong. She's having second thoughts about it. Now, what do the professionals say wearing the masks? The professionals are like, it's the hormones. Don't be worried. Don't worry. You'll be fine. You'll be totally okay, right? This is exactly what happens whenever they're doing the governments and the people who are in charge or the authorities of our world, right? When they're doing things that are clearly wrong for us, that are clearly bad for us, but it's good for them, then they will lie. That's just what this is. They lie and they say, oh, it's fine. You'll be fine. Calm down. It's totally fine. Like, remember whenever we broke down the night of the comet, right? And that girl went into that little hospital, or not the hospital, but there's that lady that wanted to like inject her with something. And she's like, I don't know about this injection. And she's like, oh, trust me, it's totally fine. You barely even feel it and it'll make you feel really good. It killed her. You know what I mean? And this is what happens all the time in our world. They say, trust me, it's totally fine. But in reality, the doctor's like, I could do this with my eyes closed. Look at his eyes, right? Let's zoom in onto these black, evil looking eyes, right? So for those of us who have the eyes to see, this is what we see when we look at various authority figures in this world. Okay. They have dark, soulless eyes. They do not have light inside of them because they're running off of pure programming. They're running off of pure commands. They run off of the purpose that has been given to them, which has come from some otherworldly place, not terrestrial, not from the blue beam, not from anything that is life-giving or anything that adds to this world. They're soulless in nature, and you can see it in their eyes, which are the windows to the soul. But when other people look at them, they look totally normal like that, right? We see them like that. When you have that blue beam and that blue light, right, just like it is in her face right now, you can see things for what they really are. When you walk in purity and goodness and kindness, that's how you see. But if you have that light out, this is what you see. You just see regular people. They look just like everybody else, right? It's like putting on the glasses from They Live. Now they have her all strapped down. He's like, all right, cool. Now kill her, right? Just go ahead and kill her. That's basically like what happens quite often in these types of places. Now, one of them starts to freak out, and you can see that she's obviously not human like we are, or, you know, she doesn't have that good blue beam energy or whatever. And the lichen dude comes in. He just starts blasting them and reveals them for who they really are. He says, my name is Cain Wise, and I'm here to help you. Let's break down his name. Actually, yeah, let's break down his name real quick. So if you look up cane, like a regular walking stick, right? Now there's different ways you could look at this, but we're going to look up the walking stick. It comes from the old French cane, which means a reed, a cane, or a spear. This is symbolic of that blue beam, once again, that shoots up from inside of the earth or grows up to the sky, which many different legends talk about, especially in Native American legends. They talk about how there was this reed that grew up into the sky and touched the sky, and that people crawled up that reed just like Jack's beanstalk, and they made it into the next world. Okay, so this is the wise reed. You can tell this character is good because he represents the wise, or the wisdom of the goddess who grows up, the light that comes up out of the castle, out of the tower, out of the mountain, etc., out of the cave, and so on and so forth. Holding a spear, etc. Also, Cain is directly related to the last name Kohen, or Khan, which means priest. Okay, so these people, they're the ones that were the closest to that beam of light, and they could talk with God. They represented that beam of light, and they brought that message from that energy to the further reaches of the world, to people who were living, you know, more in savage lands that were very far removed from that good energy, right? The priests, or the Kohen, or the Khans, initially, the Levites, etc., the lovers of the world, right? This is how it began. It was twisted over time. Okay, so all of those things became twisted over time as the remnant, I'll call them, the good vibe tribe, was infiltrated. Okay, which is and a whole nother story. But anyways, so here he is. You can see he's got a little tattoo on his arm. So let's check out this tattoo. If you look at his tattoo, it is the caduceus. Okay, this is the tree of life. This is, more of like a modern depiction of it, but this is the caduceus. Even with the little ball, the all-seeing eye up there at the top, you can see it's the Kabbalistic tree of life with the sephirot and the spheres, branching out of it. Each one of those spheres is a different ball of energy that grows or is seen as growing as the fruit of the tree of life. It's little manifestations, little whirlpools and eddies of pure energy that branch off and float down, and it's seen as like the fruit from the tree of life falling down, which we're going to take a closer look at here in just a bit. All right, so the lichen is there to protect her. Okay, the dog creatures are almost always good. Okay, they typically represent good, and they typically on TV shows, especially dog aliens. Any kind of alien that's like a part dog represents like a good energy. Okay, now she says, yes, I used a false name. So that blue beam goes by many names. Okay, it all depends across time, cultures, histories, perceptions. People will label it however they see it, and that how they see it is dependent upon their experience in life. Thus far, it's called a perception filter, right? So this blue beam will be called by many different names. Max Collins gifted 20 memberships. Max, man, you're very kind, like all the time. Super, thank you. Wow. So if you're in the chat right now, you're probably going to get a membership. That's pretty awesome. All right, cool. Big shout out to Max once again. Thank you so much, Max. All right, so we get back to this lichen, this werewolf dude. And he says, they cut my DNA with the DNA of something like a wolf. Okay, so this wolves versus the vampires. And we go back to that. So he's his own best friend. Just like in Spaceballs, right? I'm a Mog. He's his own best friend. I just wanted to say that. Anyways, I made this video that makes a direct correlation between the vampiric race or the elven race and the werewolf race. Basically, it's called the elven aging theory, and it's a theory that I have that when elves, they take a very long time to go through puberty. So at first, they don't have horns and stuff, right? Their ears start to grow very long because your nose, your ears, and fingernails, different parts of your body after puberty will continue to grow. So imagine that you're a being that lives for like 1,000 years. You're going to start having long, pointy ears. You might have a much larger nose. It reminds me of Red Riding Hood, actually, right? So my theory is that elves are just young werewolves, and werewolves are old elves who have gone through puberty, and they're starting to become, the elders of the community or whatnot, right? So they start to develop facial hair and stuff. This is an elven standard of beauty right here. The young gods, the youngest ones, were placed in charge of humanity because nobody wanted that job. Nobody wants to deal with human drama. You know what I mean? If you're in charge and you're the leaders of the gods, you're like, no. I have my son do that. I have my daughter do that. Like, they're kids. Like, they need to learn this kind of thing. So they put the younger gods in charge of the humans. The humans experienced seeing what the gods look like, and they thought that all of them looked like that. But the hidden gods looked like that. Or, they had facial hair and they were like uglier, I guess you could say, right? And they grew horns and stuff over time. Anyways, that's why you see the relationship between vampires and werewolves so often in the movies. Deb, welcome to my channel, Deb. All right, cool. So Jupiter, she's able to reach, like, the vampire dude. I mean, the werewolf dude is showing her like he has this technology so that she can reach through this window, which has a reflection, which means it's a type of mirror or a two-way mirror or a portal mirror specifically. You see this in the movies. This is from the Neverending Story where Atreyu had to come face to face with himself. This mirror was surrounded by ice. We've covered this already, so you can check out my Truth in Movies about this particular movie right here, which is the Neverending Story, right? So there's a reason why it's covered in ice right there. It's just like the Matrix. When Neo reaches through, it's passing through the mirror. It's passing through the glass. It's passing through the dome of our world, basically. And after you do that, you go through the looking glass, just like Alice, and you get into Wonderland. You get into wondrous places, the fractalverse, the hive of space, you could say. And everything is wonderful and different and totally strange from our world. So this dude, he starts liking her, and he shows her his kicks, which light up and allow him to float, which is pretty sweet. It's a good move. She's like, "Are those flying boots?" And he's like, "Yeah, totally. Check them out." He represents also Mercury, right? Who also holds the caduceus, which is the blue beam that branches out at the top, creates little, wings and stuff for the phoenix and, the thunderbird and stuff like that. But he was said to be able to fly or to be able to walk on water as well, just like Jesus. And he had these boots or these shoes that allowed him to fly. So he's a type of Mercury type of figure. Now she hops on and they ride a blue beam of light into the sky, exactly how we just talked about, and how we continue to talk about how this place where the blue beam shoots up from Mount Meru is also a place where you can be in that light, right? Not all plasma will burn and electrocute you. Some plasmas are safe. Those are affectionately known as cold plasmas. It doesn't mean that they feel cold to the touch. They may be warm, but they're not going to burn you or set your hair on fire or anything. And if it's ionized oxygen, it has such incredible healing factors to it. So anyways, also keep in mind that if they're in that blue beam, they are also in the zephyr, or the place where the world is breathing out, right? Depressurizing, and all that wind is pushing up into the sky. Now imagine being in that place in the biggest opening in our world, where there's this mighty zephyrous wind that is blowing up in an environment that has an increase in buoyancy in the fluid that we walk around in, called our atmosphere. Right? That means that, just like in, what was that movie? Not John Carpenter, but John something of Mars, John Carter of Mars, right? Just like how when he woke up on Mars, he was able, with just his regular muscle structure on Earth, he's able to leap tall buildings in a single bound. Basically, he becomes Superman. He has these superhero type qualities, which is what will happen to many of us, probably most of us, if not all of us, who make it, who survive, and we become victorious, or we are the victors, over the apocalypse. When we get into the next world, if there's an increase in buoyancy, like I believe there will be, then your muscles that are existent right now, where you don't feel like, you're so strong in the world as is, you will be incredibly strong in the world to come. All right, cool. And you can see there's these towers up there too. Max Collins donated $300. And says, bro, you blow my mind. Says, I love you, Jay. I can't breathe right now. Says, I love you, Jay. We could talk for hours. I wish we learned these truths long ago. Well, let's talk for hours sometime. Man, geez, thank you. Thank you so much. I'm going to continue with the presentation just to be professional, but please believe that you have my deepest thank you for all of your amazing support. Thank you so much. All right. So you cannot, they're driving, and she says, you cannot just blow up a bunch of buildings and get away with it, which you can. I'll show you. Those buildings will be rebuilt tonight, he says. And she says, that's impossible. She takes a look back at the buildings that were just destroyed, right? Because they're all looking for all the bad guys they're looking for. So they blew up all these buildings, and they instantly just become not destroyed, right? And she says, holy crap. She says, wait a minute, but a bunch of people just saw what happened. I mean, they can't cover that up, right? So she imagines in her mind, and so do we, that just because a large portion of the population, or a city of people, or even the world, just because we all witnessed something happen does not mean that a spell cannot be easily cast right away over everyone's perceptions and change those perceptions so that we didn't see what we thought we saw, right? And he says they blanked you. They blank your mind. They change your mind. In the Bible, it says that the heart is deceptive above all things. But in the Bible, that word heart is actually more akin to the brain or to the mind. The mind is deceptive. It can be easily tricked based on what is given to it. It changes its thinking. It changes the programming. It changes reality, just like in the Truman Show, right? Reality, we accept the reality with which we are presented. That's how easy the mind can be tricked. And it's basic. It's so simple. It's not difficult to trick people or to pull the wool over people's eyes. He says short-term stuff is super easy. It's really easy. But no one ever believes the ones that slip through the cracks. That's why they don't care. If I'm on YouTube right now, slipping through the cracks, feeding you guys these breadcrumbs. They don't care because other people, the majority of the world, they're not going to believe it. They're going to believe what they see on the 7 o'clock news. That's what they're going to believe. Just like they have before. Many different times throughout history, right? Our perceptions have been altered and changed, and our physical, actual world has been changed, but the story has also changed, which has in man, you guys blow my mind. The story changes with our perception of what has happened, or with what we were being fed, right? They call this man, what do they call that? The donation kind of like blew my mind. I'm sorry. But anyway, so here's Stonehenge, okay? Being built in the modern era. Now they say that like, oh no, we were fixing it or whatever. Bro, it doesn't need fixing, okay? You need to leave this stuff alone. They rebuilt Stonehenge time and time again, so much so that it's completely different from what it originally looked like. And this is where you get the flashy thingy from Men in Black, which also shows an episode where an entire city in New York all witnessed some crazy stuff happening, but they had this huge flashy thingy or neuralizer, which affects your neurons in your brain and is related to synapses and stuff too in the fractalverse. And the Statue of Liberty has a huge neuralizer which flashes, and everyone in New York City, or most of them, see it, and they all forget what happened, right? Now check this out. What direction is the Statue of Liberty facing? Directly at New York City. Does the Statue of Liberty directly face New York City? That's a question I'm just going to leave to you in the chat, okay? I'm interested to see what you all say. Do you believe that the Statue of Liberty faces New York or faces away from New York? I would like to know what you think, because this is a little game that we're playing right now to test our own memory and our own perception. What do you think? Does it face to or face away? You tell me in the chat what you think. Hey, Renee Garcia, I see you in the chat. It's good to see you. All right, so this is where we get the Mandela effect from, right? Here is a clear example. Let me show you something, because this is my favorite Mandela effect. A Mandela effect is when reality shifts and changes. However, that flash, some of us are not affected by the flashy thingy. Some of us, a remnant of us, and specifically a remnant of us, are unaffected. We remember. We have spirit memory. We are unaffected by these spells that happen. Look at the spelling. Berenstein. Or some people would say Stein, but it's Steen, and it means stone, right? Berenstein Bears. In this particular book right here, right? This is how I remember the spelling. And I know beyond, if I know anything, okay, like if I had to pick any Mandela effect that I know, this was the way that this name was spelled on these books. 100%, 1,000,000%. I know that. However, if you pick up a copy today, any copy, even copies from years and years ago, from when I was a child, you will see it spelled like that. Stain. Like you spilled something on the carpet and it left a stain. That bothers me. That irritates me. It's like deja vu. It's like that feeling of deja vu, and you're like, no. Something weird is happening, right? I know something is weird is happening because I took a mental note. Okay, I put a little pin in this particular subject when I was a child, because it's exactly at the moment when I was learning the rules for grammar and the rules of spelling, and I asked my teacher about the I before E, and this was a clear example of the I before E and the rule that, you know, the I before E except after C and stuff. Now it doesn't apply at all because it's an A and an I, and I never would have had that problem. Okay, I get in my feelings about this particular one. Anyways, let's move forward. Oh my God, thank you so much for you guys. Thank you. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to call. Oh, you guys threw me off. All right, thank you. Max. All right. Now we get back to the movie. He says that Jupiter has 3 primary heirs. Now what we're going to learn is that she, Mila Kunis, is actually a reincarnation of this blue beam, okay, or of Jupiter, the god, okay? And that god has 3 primary heirs. The oldest is Balaam, okay? Balaam in the Old Testament, if you look into the Old Testament, if you're into that, there's a famous story of Balaam and the donkey. Balaam was a powerful wizard. He could speak to animals, and one day he was riding on this donkey, and the donkey kept going off of the path because there was an angel that was in front of them, or an energetic entity that was going to kill them if they continued on that path. Animals can see in the energy spectrum, okay, much differently than most humans can. So there's a story of Balaam and the donkey, and how Balaam like beat his donkey and got all mad and had this conversation with his donkey, and his donkey spoke right back to him. That's the story of the talking donkey, the original talking donkey, like in Shrek, right? But Balaam was a powerful wizard, and if you read in the book of Joshua, you get an entire backstory on this wizard and his entire trek and where he went and where he ruled and the people who sought his counsel and stuff. He's seen as being an evil wizard, basically. And he had two famous children named Janus, right? Or Janus, and Jambres, or James, basically. Oh, excuse me. All right. Let's continue on. She says, I'm telling you, I am nobody. She's like, I'm not this famous person. I'm not this goddess. I'm not any of this stuff. I am nobody. This is a code to those of us who are watching the movies, and many of us are starting to learn these things, which I love, right? What does nobody come from? Nobody is a code for survivors of the apocalypse. Nobody comes from the Proto-Indo-European root word nem, N-E-M. Right? Sometimes it has a suffix like Nemu or Nemo or Nomo, etc. It's spelled in different ways, but Nem means a remnant. Nem means what is left over. So it implies the victors, those who survive the apocalypse. She says, I'm telling you, I'm nobody. She survives the apocalypse, as do those of us, typically it's implied, that have a remnant of her soul within us. That's why she's wearing blue and white, right? We have the blue beam inside of us. And I'm just using that symbolic terminology, okay? You can call it whatever you want to call it. Especially if you're religious, call it whatever you want to. It's totally fine. This is just my descriptive artistic wording, okay, of being a good person. Now, they're going to this dude's house. And he says that he's a marshal for the Aegis. Remember we talked about Janus and how Janus or Jupiter holds the Aegis, which was the shield, the specific shield. This is what the shield looks like. This was a shield of protection, but it was also a shield that typically had the face of a Gorgon, typically that of Medusa, put onto it, right? So it was a shield that had the face of Medusa, which was this goddess who had these snakes that came out of her face or whatever, who could petrify, right? Here's another example of it. This is my favorite example of the Aegis I've ever seen. I love it because it matches all my vibe and my neon and stuff. But it's Medusa's head. And here's what it is. This is a little screenshot I took. I don't know if I could do my own little thing. That's so funny. It's weird to see myself on there. How interesting. We're getting all meta on it now. Anyways, this is a video that I did. This video is called Shoot the Moon. So if you'd like to look this up, I go into depth about an alternative theory, cosmological view of what the moon is and where the moon comes from. Okay, so here we have our world, which is at the bottom of a crater, affectionately. And at the top, we have an energetic field that goes up and around in the shape of a dome. However, when that dome breaks in the middle, it creates another energetic feature, which is a mini inverted dome at the top of it, right? And whenever this, basically it freezes, okay? I don't want to do the whole video all over again, but this energetic dome freezes, okay, because of the gases that are up there. Those gases freeze and they sublimate and it turns into ice, okay? And it gives us an inverted dome at the very top of our sky dome, which is the origin and the actual place of the moon, which is directly above the center of our world, the North Pole, Mount Meru, which is why when that beam shoots up and hits it, right, it is seen as also representing the moon or being the goddess of the moon and the god of the moon, etc., right? So that's called Shoot the Moon, Earth Dome Theory. If you want to check that one out, it's pretty popular and people seem to really enjoy that one. All right, so she's like, space cops. Oh man, we're going to go visit a bunch of space cops. Really interesting. The terminology, right? Everyone's like, you have to see this movie every time I say space cops, because I believe there are space cops. There are those factions out there in the fractalverse who chase down those who break the rules. The rules are when you slide into another world. Okay, when you're playing cosmic chutes and ladders and you slide into another world, there's certain rules and expectations, which is you're not supposed to go just alter timelines of the indigenous species or the terrestrial species that live there and just introduce them to all this technology that you have or whatever. You're supposed to allow them to grow naturally. They're supposed to be able to do it on their own. You're supposed to be a watcher. You're supposed to be somebody that stands aside, keeps to you and your family, and you allow the rest of the world to sort of evolve as they go. Okay. And there's a reason for that. It has to do with the mind of God and the fractalverse. So anyways, she gets to this place where the space cops live. And there's all these bees all over the place. There's a lot of bee symbolism. Obviously, she starts doing the squatter man, the Atlas pose, and all these bees start surrounding her. You'll notice that there's a lot of bee symbolism for a couple of different reasons, especially when you look at Freemasonic imagery and symbols and stuff like that they use in Freemasonry. You'll notice that there's a lot of beehive symbolism, honeycombs, bees, honey, this type of stuff, because they reference different things, okay? One of those things that they reference is, you'll notice there's a honeycomb right behind his head. Okay, the honeycomb represents the fractalverse. It represents the fullness of what we call space. Space is limited to our world, okay? Outside of our world, there's not as much space, okay? There are hallways, there are conduits and stuff that lead into other places, and it is very filled with life all over the place. It is not just a dark, black emptiness or void, okay? We are the void. We have a void in here, okay? Anyways, and then we've got like the honey and stuff. We'll actually come back to the honey later. So they recognize that because the bees are surrounding her, that she has that good vibe energy. She doesn't get bit by bees or stung by bees or whatever. Now she goes into the house and she gets a phone call from her cousin, who is the same dude who said, you need to sell your eggs so we can get some money. You need to sell your body parts so we can get some money. You need to donate plasma so we can get some money. You need to donate your blood so we can get some money, right? How many of you have heard that? How many of you are tempted or have even done that? I used to do that. I used to be so poor that I thought I had to sell my plasma in my blood just to get by, right? And that's basically who she's talking to, is her cousin. And her cousin's like, it's life-changing, Jupiter. Charlie, just donate $100? And says, big up, friends. Much respect to the presentation, JayDreamerZ. Thank you. And splash the popcorn. I'm eating all the popcorn tonight. Thank you so much, everyone. Charlie. Charlie. That reminds me of All Dogs Go to Heaven. Charlie, that's cool. Right on. All right, so let's continue on in the presentation. You guys are going to... All right, let's continue on. I'm going to cry, man. You guys are... Seriously, thank you so much. I'm thinking about my boy. All right. So she's talking to her cousin on the phone, and listen to what her cousin says. This is life-changing. It's life-changing, right? This changes everything. This changes everything. That's like the catchphrase of the day in these days, right? This changes everything, right? They're just trying to excite people so that they get them to watch their stuff, right? Everything is always changing. I just want to put that out there, okay? There's not one thing out there that changes everything. All of it changes everything. Everything is in constant motion, and everything affects everything else. So it all depends on your perspective. So this is what he's talking about that changes everything. 2 million pixels of resolution. He just got a brand new TV. Meanwhile, she's over here talking to half werewolves. She's learned that she's like the queen of the galaxy. She's being hunted by bounty hunters from space. She's meeting space cops and stuff. This is me. This is JayDreamerZ. Okay, this is my real actual world. This is the rest of this crazy upside down idiocracy world to me. Okay, I don't get excited about that. I have a TV that's big and stuff. I don't even care. I'm thankful. I appreciate it. But this is what I'm into. I want to talk about aliens and werewolves and vampires and plasma and energetics and immortality. This is what I'm interested in, man. This is what excites me and pumps me up, as well as everybody in the chat. Jesus, you guys are killing me. But this is the rest of the world sitting on their butts watching television. You know what I mean? Like, don't get me wrong. I watch TV too. I'll play video games and stuff, but this is not what I only just want to talk about. If I'm playing video games and stuff, like, I will ground myself for a little bit, but I can't help to see the symbolism in it and stuff. You know what I mean? Like, if I'm talking to other humans, I want to talk about this stuff. This guy says, I don't think that most people would want to know the truth. Like this. Okay, these people don't want to know the truth. These people that are just sitting on their butt eating a bunch of wings and stuff, and they get excited and they watch the news and crap like that, and they're into drama and the Kardashians and whatever kind of dumb stuff. This is what they are interested in. He says most people don't want to know. They don't want to think deeply. Okay, they are terrestrial. They are base. They are not trying to grow or anything. They're like tiny children. Okay, no offense to anybody, but Every single person in this world, currently in the modern age, as of this video, is a child in my mind, to me and to many other people, including and especially myself. Okay. I'm the biggest kid of all. Okay. But I'm talking about maturity. Okay. Maturity wise, we are all children, and this is a daycare. Okay. If you look around, it's so much drama and childish stuff that's happening all over the place. He says most people don't want to know the truth. Those with the blue beam say, I do. And this is why we come here. This is why I have this channel. This is why there's amazing people in the chat. I love all your emojis too. I love you guys using all those cool emojis. All right, anyways. So she says, I do. And he's like, all right, you want to know the truth? Let's talk about it. So you've been taught that the birthplace of humanity is Earth, but it's not, right? This is what we're taught in our schools and modern academics, that we all just kind of grew out of a soup or whatever, and then turned into insects and turned into birds and turned into monkeys and stuff. And this is where we originate. This is not where we originate. Okay. There are many worlds. This one was just only discovered because people traveled from world to world to world, and energies migrated from world to world to world. And we ended up here on Earth number, whatever Earth this is. Okay. Whatever realm this is. He says it's actually a planet in the Cunabulum system called Oros, which is really interesting because Oros means light or fire, right? So some of us are not of this world. Some of us have an energetic signature, a vibration, a vibe that is not from here, okay? It is from other places. We have, our source goes back so far in time. Now, he says, at that time, this Earth was inhabited by a branch species of Saurus sapiens. Saurus sapiens. A large-scale extinction event was manufactured or created in order to wipe out the Saurus sapiens. And then all of a sudden, electricity crackles on that little device that he's holding up. Let's check it out. Now, if you look at this device, he's telling the story, and you can see there's a picture of a dinosaur right there. This is what he refers to as Saurus sapiens. This is what I call Fantazoids. Okay, otherworldly creatures that are sort of reptilian in nature or insect-like in nature. They don't have that human vibe that we do. Okay, I don't want to get too deep into it right now, but that's what she says. She says, "Are you talking about the dinosaurs?" He's like, "Yeah, we wiped out the dinosaurs." Okay, and this is the story of the gods. Okay, all these people represent energetic qualities that have caused the apocalypse. He says the goal is to grow a population of humans. Keep this in mind because this applies to the world we now live in. The goal is to grow a population as large as possible. And once the population exceeds the planet's ability to sustain it, it's considered ripe for a harvest. The world will be harvested when the population of humans gets out of control, because the humans become consumers and they just start eating everything to such a degree that the Earth defends itself and causes an apocalypse by reversing the electromagnetic barrier. All right, now we go way off world into some other Earth, some other place. Jupiter's up there. She's sort of being kidnapped by every single one of these family members and just taken from place to place. So the female, this is going to get really interesting. So now we're going to talk about immortality. Excuse me one second. Now, she says, I know in the future they're going to play a commercial right there. Watch. I promise you, in the future, because I stopped talking, that's where the algorithm's like, put a commercial in there quick. I promise you, watch. Now, she says, in our world, and she's surrounded by all these lights, genes, like your DNA, genes have an almost spiritual significance in our world. When the exact same genes reappear in the exact same order, which they do, and I've done videos about it, how there's doppelgangers and stuff like that. We have them here already. The human population is so out of control, a little off topic, okay? But the human population is so large. Whatever you think it is, that's fine, I respect it. But to me, I see people everywhere, okay? It's so large that the coding is starting to repeat itself so that you see twins that were not born of the same mother and father, because the code it needs to repeat itself. It's not unique. It will start looping. Your DNA is on a loop. Our DNA is looped. And it's only supposed to be looped from world to world, right? You'd have to go to a different world to see another version of yourself. When you start seeing versions of yourself here in the same world, watch out, okay? Because the world's going to need to cleanse house, okay? Anyways, back to this. It says, when the exact same genes or DNA reappear in the exact same order, it is for us what you would call reincarnation. Okay, so being reincarnated. Now, that takes us to the story of the Anunnaki, or those who floated down from the heavens, from the sky. They were known, many of them especially, were known as being prolific geneticists. The stories of the Enuma Elish, the creation story from ancient Babylon and Nineveh, especially that as translated by Zecharia Sitchin, that's how I came across the information. They talked about how the Anunnaki were geneticists. They came here and they knew how to manipulate and splice and separate the smallest pieces and how to manipulate genes. Now take a look at some of these Anunnaki type caricatures, these characters. Now this one over here you can know is Enki. Okay, so this is how you can always know who Enki is, because he's got an electrical arc that goes all the way across, okay? Or sometimes it's seen as being a river of water or whatever. It's fluid. But this is Enki sitting on Mount Meru, or the throne of God. And look at this dude. What is this? Because this is exactly how the legs of those alien grays looked, right? You see how like they're inverted almost? And he's got these weird bird feet right there. And almost looks like this is some sort of insectoid, weird alien type deal. I don't know. I just noticed that. I thought that was really interesting. But these are the Anunnaki. They were the geneticists, right? And they were said to be extremely strong. Look at these muscles that they have on them, right? Advanced technology with their little Anunnaki handbags and their little Anunnaki watches and stuff like that, right? They also had horns, because they lived for a very long time. And when you live for a very long time, your bones continue to grow. And you will grow little points and stuff on different places. It all depends on the individual. But humans will grow horns. These Anunnaki were human. They were humanoid. They were just like us, but they lived under different conditions. Okay? And now look at this one. He's got wings too, which you're going to see that in this movie as well. All right, cool. So it says here that the Anunnaki are Homo sapiens like us, but who live hundreds of thousands of years. They are said to have rocketed to Iraq 450,000 years ago from a planet called Nibiru. Now, Nibiru is typically a red planet, or a red circle up there in the sky that appears every so often, like clockwork, repetitiously, right? It's cyclical. And it is the place of the crossing. It is a place where you can cross over from this world into a different realm, into a different place. It's a Stargate. It's a portal. I don't believe that there are marbles out there floating around in the fractalverse. I believe everything is solid and structured, and there are places in between, liminal spaces and stuff, but like I said, it's the fullness. It is not empty space. So I don't believe in all that modern academic stuff. If you do, totally fine. So if you do, Nibiru would be like a red planet way out there in space. But if you don't, Nibiru is that inner dome that I showed you, the moon, basically, that has a hole in it, okay? And it's all red because the plasma on the other side of our world is also red. So when it makes its appearance, you will see a red dome or a red circle, a red planet up there in the sky, and it is a Stargate. It's the place where you can leave this world and go into other worlds. That's why it's called the place of the crossing, the Nibiru, or the crossing of life. That letter N actually represents life, or the substance of life. So it is life crossing, or life that crosses over. And it's also, Iburu is also the root of the word Hebrew as well, which means to cross over, specifically from a land of death to a land of life, right? All right, so she's like, are you some kind of vampire race or something? And she says, we are the cause of a lot of those myths. So yes, the movie is telling you this is the truth. Okay, there's truth to the vampires. There's truth to the lichens and the werewolves and stuff. Now, watch what she does. She takes her into this bathhouse where she gets down into this bluish liquid, and watch her face. Let's take a look at her face, because you're going to see immortality at work. This is what happens when you go to Mount Meru and you bathe in the eternal light of the eternal flame. Okay, and you bathe in that cold plasma, that ionized oxygen. Okay, this is what it does to the skin. That light, that laser type light. Look at her face now. She goes under the water and she comes back up and looks like that. Let's do that again real quick. Papow, you see that? She probably looks like she's in her 40s or something, right? Yikes, I'm in my 40s. So she goes into the water in her 40s, comes out looking like she's about 27. Okay, in her prime, because her DNA knows exactly where the prime is and it gets readjusted. Now, we're going to talk about that. She starts saying, how is that possible? How'd you do that? And she says, well, we learned how to replace the deteriorating cells with new ones. It's very easy and it's very simple when you know how it works. Clones, she's like, is it cloning? She's like, no, clones lack genetic plasticity. Now, that's a fancy way of talking about the elastin and the collagen that exists within our own skin. Okay, elastin and collagen are what are responsible in your skin for keeping your skin nice and tight and snapping back into place, right? When you get old and over time your body deteriorates, your skin specifically starts to deteriorate. And it will do so faster and faster the worse we treat it. The more we poison our body and stuff, the more faster we deteriorate, right? The more we treat our skin and our bodies badly, the faster the body starts falling apart. And it will stretch and it won't be able to snap back. So for example, people who have had a lot of angry episodes in their life, I myself am no exception, will start developing a line right there because they frown so much. You see that? Right? Now, if you have really strong energy, right, that energy produces more elastin in your body. If you have a strong spirit, I'm just going to say it, if you have a strong soul, okay, you will look younger, okay, and you'll look younger a lot longer. There's exceptions to that, but it is the energy. It is the power that exists within us that we call the soul. When it is amplified, it has an effect on the physical parts of the bodies, the cellular structure that is in our body, and it will create more elastin and more collagen. The collagen keeps your skin strong. The elastin is what helps it to snap back into place, keeping it tight, right? Keeps it like soft and tight. Keeps you young, basically. And this is what happens when you go to Mount Meru and you bathe in the plasma. And you go into the mountain and it rejuvenates your skin, right? It creates more elastin, more proteins in your body, and it keeps you young. It is the fountain of youth. Now, it says here, collagen's main role in the body is to provide structure, strength, and support throughout your body. Collagen's specific roles include helping fibroblasts to form in your dermis, or your middle skin layer, which helps new cells to grow. Elastin is the main component of elastic fibers, which provide stretch. Recoil, that means when you stretch your skin out, you want it to pop right back into place where it was, so you can remain young. Okay, if you don't, you will get wrinkles. That's what wrinkles are, is when your skin's stretched and it doesn't quite go all the way back to where it's supposed to be, right? So recoil, stretch, and elasticity to the skin. Now, in the post-apocalyptic world, this is the effect that our world will have when it fills up with ionized oxygen. Those who live further away from the blue beam will start feeling these effects over time. Those who live near to the blue beam will feel these effects instantly, right away. It will start restructuring your DNA, and your body will start working like a little factory the way it's supposed to, and you will stay young for a very long time. You'll have immortality, as we're used to calling it, right? So the elasticity of this. Oh, another thing is, if you have a lot of it, you'll be able to stretch super far. Okay, you'll be able to like turn your head way further than you normally be able to. Your bones and stuff, like you'll be able to stretch. Like you'll have stretchy powers. Okay, that could get out of control. I don't know, but you'll be able to stretch like a lot. You'll like, if you can bend your finger back like a little bit, you'll be able to bend it back all the way, okay? Like, and it won't hurt or anything because you'll be so stretchy, but you'll be young. You're not going to like be weird or anything. I don't know. It's sort of a weird superpower to have, but it is a byproduct of living and surviving into the post-apocalyptic world. All right. Anyways, laser skin tightening. We actually do this. We have stumbled upon this today. Unfortunately, they use tiny little lasers just on certain parts of the skin, and that light, the energy itself, rejuvenates. It sends a message. The light contains coding. It contains commands. It contains you get the point, right? Anyways, the light tells the skin, hey, fix yourself, basically. And it says laser skin tightening is minimally invasive cosmetic procedure to help stimulate production of collagen and elastin in the skin. Here are some modern day examples before laser surgery or laser. I don't know if it's called surgery, but it's not surgery. Okay. It's not like plastic surgery or anything. They're just shining light on your face. Okay. Focused beams of light at certain frequencies will tell your skin to make more elastin and collagen. Now, this is done on a small scale today. Imagine walking into a pool of plasma like we saw in the movie, right? Where you're just instantly reinvigorated. This stuff takes a lot longer. They only do it like with a little pencil all over your body, but you can see before and after. You can see the effects before the laser surgery or the lasers, procedure or whatever, and after. Right? This is a known thing that we have in our world today, but it's just done on such a small scale. And of course, they're going to charge you a ridiculous amount so that people, most people can't afford this type of stuff on their body or whatever to get this laser stuff. But you can see the before and after. Fractional laser before and after. Boom, right there. This is the eyes, right? So like me, I'm starting to get little crow's feet on the side of my eyes right over here, from smiling and laughing and stuff like that. If you put the lasers on that, it automatically, the face tightens itself up. Okay. It rejuvenates. It's amazing what the light can do. Jupiter, we go back to, one of her reincarnated brothers one of the triplet gods or whatever. And he takes her down and shows her this substance. And she's like, what is this? And he's like, this is the stuff that girl just bathed in. This is the stuff that rejuvenates our skin. Look at the color. You see, that's that baby bluish white color. That's the ionized oxygen from within the earth. That's the terrestrial plasma. And they take a bunch of it, like see how it's kind of stacked in like a honeycomb type shape. And he says it has many names: Regenex, Recell, Nectar. Now, nectar should be a huge shout out to the ambrosia of Greek mythology, the ambrosia of the gods, the honey, the dew of the gods. And it says that it's often depicted as conferring longevity or immortality upon whoever consumed it. It was brought to the gods in Olympus by doves. So Olympus is Mount Meru at the center of our world. That honey, that ambrosia, that nectar is created whenever you have that ionized, highly amplified energetic beam of light shooting up into the fluid of our atmosphere. It interacts with that fluid, and you have a byproduct of this viscous material that falls down and off of it that is highly energetically charged. So these people ate it, they drank it, they bathed in it, they put it all over themselves, and they became anointed. Okay, so basically they lived a very long time by drinking this drink of the gods, this ambrosia. Here's an interesting story. It says, with ambrosia, Hera, the goddess Hera, cleansed all defilement from her lovely flesh. And with ambrosia, Athena prepared Penelope in her sleep, so that when she appeared for the final time before her suitors, the effect of years had been stripped away, and they were inflamed with passion at the sight of her. Exactly how you saw in the movie, how she went from an old woman to a young woman in her prime, a beautiful young woman in her prime. The body is a machine, and that machine right now in this world of exponential entropy is breaking, and it's breaking down, and it's breaking down faster and faster as time moves forward. But the day will come when we will move and transition from a world of increased entropy, or an entropic world, and we will transition into a regenerative world where all of these hundreds upon hundreds of blue beams the world across are all shooting out and filling our world with ionized oxygen or light. Once more, it says the consumption of ambrosia was typically reserved for the divine beings, which is why you see this in the movie, why the divine beings, the gods and goddesses, this is all true. It's just been rewritten and put into movie form to entertain the masses. However, these are clues that some of us will pick up on. I don't know why my chat does that sometimes. You guys ever have the chat when you're in the chat and it says like there was an error or something happened to your chat and just the whole chat disappears and it says retry? That just happened on my device. I think that's really weird. Anyways, he says your planet is a farm, Jupiter. Now in the movie, they say that they get this material not from plasma, but from humans, almost like it's adrenochrome. I'm going to put my foot down. Okay. Sort of. This is my perspective. Okay. I know a lot of people are real quick to jump on the adrenochrome train because of the conspiracies and all that type of stuff. Yes, there is a such thing as adrenochrome. However, no, it's not the elixir of the gods. No, it is not ambrosia. No, it is not haoma. No, it is not soma. No, it is not any of these nectar of the gods. Okay. That comes from the energy of the earth itself. Okay. So it's totally different. It's a drug. That adrenochrome stuff is a drug. Okay. And, we're not talking about that. So in the movie, it's like they're harvesting it from humans. Okay. They make this stuff out of humans. That's why he says your planet is a farm. Now I'm going to tell you the esoteric truth, symbolically speaking, behind our world being a farm. It is a farm because it is harvested for information. Every single thing that gets sucked out of this world when our atmosphere depressurizes is energetic information, especially your memories, especially the brains of those animals and people that run around in this little school of life experiencing things. Okay. That experience needs to be collected and it needs to be put through plasma conduits and sent through celestial neurons or cosmic neurons into other hubs so that that information can be processed. And so in that aspect, it is a data harvest. And we go through this whenever on the large scale, if you look at the mind of God theory that I talk about, or the fractalverse theory, where we live way down here in one of these tiny little craters. This is a synapse. This is the very tip of a neuron in the brain. Right? We talked about this a lot when we talk about the Who's and Quantum Mania on that last movie breakdown. But here's the crater. Here's one of the craters of the various Earths. Okay. If it's true, okay, so we're just going to say hypothetically, if this is where we live, let me turn it around so it looks better. Whoa, what happened? It's all black. I don't know what happened. I lost it. Okay, don't do that. Well, that's too big. It was too big. That's what happened. All right, cool. Now I'm going to zoom into this. So let's just say that this is our local part of our local galaxy or world or however you want to see it. Okay. Now let's say that this crater right here, this is where we live. Now, there would be a little hole in the middle because it would go down into that neuron. There's got to be passageways and stuff where information, which is right down here on the bowels of the earth or on the inner recesses of our world, that information comes up and is born into our world. Okay. These all would have little bubbles and little domes over them or whatever. And the information would be released from time to time when it is called upon. This would give us depressurization of these tiny little worlds. All this information is just people and animals and plants and all kinds of stuff that gets sucked up out of those worlds. And this is your rapture if you're like a Christian or something, right? All the stuff gets sucked up and it goes into heaven or into the heavenlies and it has a destination. There would actually be electrical conduits between these, like that would go from world to world and little hallways and stuff that would connect these different places because they're separated. Okay. They take certain information and they put it into its rightful place or whatever. So if you look at it through that aspect, then it's a data harvest and the earth is being harvested. I got to flip it back around. Boom. All right, cool. Let's move on. Now, Jupiter, one of her brothers, it's all political and he wants control of Earth. And right now she is in charge of Earth. Earth has been bequeathed unto her. It has been given to her. She is the Lord or the Lady of the Earth. She's the owner of the Earth basically. And her brother, and there's always three of them, right? There is one that represents the waters, the water god, like Triton or whatever, starts with a P, you know what I mean? Poseidon, right? There's the water god for the waters above. Then there is the terrestrial god or the Mount Meru type figure, the earth god. And then there's the god that represents the under earth or the hollow recesses of our world. That's why there's always three of them. They're always brother and sister and they always are related to Jupiter, Janus, that beam, etc., because that beam connects all three of them. All right, so she's getting ready. This is her wedding dress. Her brother needs to marry her so that he can take control because he wants to marry her and then kill her. Now, we don't want this to happen. Okay, when you're watching this movie, you're like, no, someone stop it. Someone stop the wedding. This is the cosmic wedding that you don't want to happen because it leads to the apocalypse. When the blue beam of the earth, that feminine Sophia wise energy, reaches up and touches the red plasma of the sky represented by her brother over there, right? This is a cosmic wedding, and that kicks off the apocalypse. When those two figures meet, okay, they cannot actually get married. So that marriage will always be interrupted. That marriage will always halt. It will always stop before it's finalized because that blue beam cannot penetrate the hole. The finger cannot go through the ring, symbolically speaking, in this cosmic wedding, okay, between the earth and the space or whatever, right? So it will always be interrupted, and you don't want it to be finished, or you don't want it to continue on forever, because then you just have a constant apocalypse, and that's not how it works. Also, you see all these people are dressed in white. That's not because they're all good. It's not because they're all innocent or pure. It's because they're in space. Okay, those creatures from space are represented by the color white because space is seen as being brilliant and white and bright, not black and dark. Okay, the priests of the covered worlds wear black, as you can see, because it is a dark city. It's a dark world. It's covered. But out there is the brilliance and the brightness of the heavens. So that's why they're all often symbolically represented by wearing white. So he says, Abrasax, take Jupiter Jones to be my wife. And then they say, what is that? And this is exactly like in The Fifth Element, right? Or exactly like in The Princess Bride. Like, there's so many times where you have this mandatory, obligatory wedding where the woman, oftentimes, it's almost always the woman, doesn't want to get married. She's being forced to get married because this is a cycle that happens that is inevitable, okay? She's going to meet her potential suitor, which is the sky god, represented by the color red quite often, and it's like she doesn't want to get married. She wants to stay here. She wants to go home. She wants to be the queen of the earth or whatever. You know what I mean? So this is always forced upon this type of a character. She doesn't want to be married. It's always a forced marriage. And at one point, he physically grabs her hand and actually puts it onto this thing that's going to like tattoo a ring or a band onto her finger. But like I said, that finger of the terrestrial god or goddess cannot fit into that ring from above because there is an electromagnetic barrier that will go up and prevent it from going into space. Okay. It's supposed to stay in the inner recesses of our world and on the surface. Basically, it's not supposed to go out into space. All right. So this guy, the werewolf dude with the elf ears, right? He's basically an aging elf. He interrupts and he jumps in here and he's the helper, the dog guy. And this guy's wearing red, as he should be, because he represents the cosmic entity, Kronos, etc. And also keep in mind that Jupiter is his reincarnated mom. Okay? So this is why when you read these ancient family genealogies and family trees of these gods and stuff, why they're always like interbreeding with one another. They don't seem to care that they, married their own sister or their mother, or they have an Oedipus complex or whatever, because it's not referring to actual physical people most of the time, but energetic occurrences, okay, that are just personified. And he says, once you get married, he was going to murder you. So once you have this apocalyptic cycle, one of those cycles, that blue beam is seen as being killed. It retreats, it retracts, it goes back down into the earth so that it can recharge for another age, for another eon, right? After this potential cosmic wedding, the opposite happens during the next age, where that blue beam stays and it is seen as vanquishing the red evil god from above or whatever, right? So sometimes it goes down and it dies, or it is sacrificed, or it is killed, or it is sent to the underworld or whatever. And then every other cycle, it emerges and it stays, and it's the vanquisher and the conqueror. You know what I mean? And it is the savior or whatever. So that's why they say that. And then they kiss, because I just wanted to bring this back. This is really important, okay? This represents love, okay? This represents getting married because you genuinely vibe. Okay, that's what marriage is when two people, when two individuals, two energies vibe with one another, they marry each other. Okay, it's not a ceremony that you have to go through. It's not a certificate that you need to get. It's a vibe that you share. Okay, it's it's almost indescribable with the teachings that we've been given and the words that we have today. But that's what true marriage is. Okay. It is a coming together of a similar vibration. That's really what it is. All right. So Philo says, and that's why marriages don't work out so much in this world. For many of us who have that blue beam, we have a lot of problems with relationships and marriages and stuff because we desire this. We desire for things to work out and happy endings. And sometimes we call ourselves hopeless romantics and stuff like that, right? And it doesn't work out because the majority of the energy signature in our world today, living in a fallen world, is the opposite of what we are. So, we try to force things when that's not right. Anyways, I don't want to get on a tangent. So they go up and they're looking down. Jupiter actually went down into Jupiter. So they're showing you the all-seeing eye symbolism right there of Jupiter and the eye, or the eye of Jupiter, the storm of Jupiter. And he says, Captain, the gate's open. So they show you the eye and they say that the gate is open. So when the eye in the sky opens up, remember it's like an inverted dome, and the middle of that dome blows out, creating the iris of this huge eye that's up in the sky or whatever, right? And it's usually red. So you have like the red all-seeing eye of the storm on Jupiter. Now this dude is this alien dude who looks like an elephant because he is an elephant. Okay. And he trumpets. I don't know. I could probably do a better elephant, but we're running out of time. Anyways, I took a picture of this dude. He's not a big character in the movie or anything, but I've seen this type of character before in many different movies where elephants or elephant type creatures or aliens are shown as being space people. Basically, they're saying that there are certain animals that we have here in our world, life forms, I should say, that are elephant-like in nature. And look at the color, right? I said everything that comes from space, or perceived space, or from the fullness, is white. Okay, it's albino-like in its color, not Caucasian. Okay, don't make that mistake. Right? I'm not even that. Okay. Look at that. This is like the true white brother or whatever, like that the Hopi would call that. Right. And this is what they were expecting when, Cortez landed and Columbus landed and stuff. And all the tribal people were like, oh, it's white. It's our white brothers. No. These are the white brothers. Okay. And, they're kind. Anyways, this is really interesting. This is from the movie Prometheus. And these entities are called the engineers, the Oceans or the Oceans, and the pilots as well. Now, if you look at this dude, he's a pilot in the movie. They actually give him a command to take the ship somewhere. He's piloting the ship. And in Prometheus, we have this elephantine-like humanoid that also is a type of pilot, right? I did a whole video about elephants too, because I think they're from space. I think they're alien creatures. They look like alien creatures. They are gigantic. Just like everything that falls down from space is giant in nature. And it says in Prometheus, the engineer that we see speaks Proto-Indo-European. This elephant creature speaks Proto-Indo-European, which is what I constantly quote when we do our etymological studies, right? Here's some other versions of this type of space alien creature. It's all over the place. You will see space elephants all over the place. Once you realize it, and I show it to you, start watching your movies and watch out for space elephants. Okay, you're going to see them all over the place. There's other animals too. Okay, there's space rhinos. There's all kinds of weird animals that come from space. Okay, it's just that they've been here so long, we got used to them, and we don't consider them to be extraterrestrial any longer, but they're now terrestrial. So at the end of the movie, they're both hanging out at the top, and she says, man, I guess you could say that my family's complicated, right? Jupiter's family is complicated. Jupiter's story represents every single story from every mythos across time. It's the same story. It's a never-ending story. It's the same family line. It's the same lineage from Norse mythology to Greek mythology to ancient Egyptian mythology. It's the same weird family members going through the exact same weird drama with one another time and time and time again. Boom. Here's Iapetus or Jupiter, right? All of these exact same humanoid figures represent energetic qualities that happen in a specific sequence, in a specific pattern in our world that we live on today. Especially when we get into an amplified and energetic atmosphere. So the boyfriend is now like, you think you're ever going to tell them? Right? He's really asking us. Like, do you think that you're ever going to tell people about all this crazy secrets and stuff like that? She says, what? That I own the earth? Pfft. they'd have me locked up, right? So there's that shush, just like we talked about when we broke down Shutter Island, right? Don't talk about it, just be about it, right? That's really what it's about. We're not here to force other people's paths. We're not here to like tell people the truth and like force them, like shake them out of it and wake them up. You ever see Pirates of the Caribbean and that one dude, that one pirate is sleeping with the pigs? And the girl throws like a bucket of cold water on him to wake him up. And he's like, don't you know it's bad luck to wake a man when he's sleeping? There's truth to that. It's bad luck to wake people when they're sleeping. Don't do that. Let them sleep. They will wake up when they're supposed to wake up, when they're ready to wake up. Me, I'm ready to wake up. I don't know about you guys. And that takes us to owning the earth. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. We are the owners of this world. It's just that, you know, the environment and the conditions and the situation has changed a bit. So we need to persist. We need to be patient, which is one of our admirable qualities that we have. I like that about myself, and I like that about all of you. This dude gets his wings, so he's the type of Michael the Archangel at the end. The angels, the otherworldly creatures and beings, and she says that ain't bad either. She likes that. She's digging this, right? So there's rewards that come with being good, is what I'm really trying to say. And love is the core behind this entire movie, right? There's a lot of cool esoteric symbolism and stuff. There's a lot of action and stuff, but this is the most important part. If you don't vibe with this part, right? Fine. That's totally fine. I respect that. But I do, right? To me, this is what makes all that action, all the symbolism, all the knowledge worthwhile. Somebody earlier said in the chat, like, man, JayDreamerZ, like, you know, you're so knowledgeable, which I appreciate, and thank you. I appreciate it, right? But there's a biblical verse, 1 Corinthians 13, talks about the love, and it's called the love chapter. And it specifically says, though I speak with the tongues of men and of angels, but I have not love, I'm nothing. It's worthless. It's pointless. All of it, all of the movie was for this moment, so that she can laugh and raise her vibration and fly and be lifted and be happy, because that's what we're looking for. That's the end of our presentation for today. I hope you guys had a good time. I hope you got something of value out of it. And thanks for all your support in the chat. Until next time, I'm JayDreamerZ saying good vibes and goodbye.
Come.